Greetings, comic book fans, and for those folks that are tuning into this. Now, you probably see me in my Comic 101 Wikipedia, and normally I don't try to talk about my favorite comic books. Now, I want to point out I do have several favorite comic books. I am a certain fanboy of the DC comics, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. One of my favorite superhero or reads would be the Suicide Squad. I'm a big fan of them, especially the Ostrander run, the Gail Simone run, even the Golden Age run. Now, I know there's a big hype and vibe over the pending movie that's coming out in 2016, right after Batman vs. Superman. Um, I'm going to suggest a few things as far as reading is concerned. Now, a lot of the Suicide Squad that you can find, and I would recommend, is going as far back as the 80s. It can be found probably in your comic book store if they got a 50-cent bin or something like that. I would do that. It's a very inexpensive way of catching up. It also helps bolster up your collection a little bit, like I've mentioned before. And besides, it's if you really want to know, or you really excited and jacked up about the Suicide Squad, that would be my recommendation. Now, my personal favorites are the, like I said, from the 80s. I have read the older ones where it's Rick Flag Sr., not Rick Flag Jr. Um, I think that for me personally, it's interesting to watch somebody take obscure comic book characters. In the case of the Suicide Squad, is usually obscure villains and or other characters that are not that didn't get a lot of heroes that didn't get a lot of comic book time or just didn't work on their own volition via their own comic book stories. Um, Getting put in there, especially if they're, and I think it's really important to say that my personal belief is you can take obscure characters, and as long as they've got a good story behind it, it works. Another prime example would be the Forgotten Heroes series. Would be another prime example of obscure characters getting a new breath of life into them. To go away from DC, I would have to say the Project Superpowers from Dynamite's always interesting to watch. You know, Black Terror, Green Llama, and all, and the Death-defying Devil, or as he's originally called, Daredevil, um, is a good possibility as well. Just so you can see what you can do with obscure characters and if they're written well. Now, like I said, this is not my usual diatribe of how to collect and what's the difference between a comic book and, say, a graphic novel, how many pages, etc., like that. That's coming down the pipe later, folks. But I just wanted to point out that, yes, I do have certain favorite comic books that I like personally that I would say would, me personally, I would like to see, and I love Suicide Squad. I'm looking forward to the new movie. Um, I'm hoping that they will pull something out from, say, the Ostrander run. John Ostrander is one of my favorite writers when it comes to the Suicide Squad. So, I want to say if you get a chance to get a Suicide Squad issues, please pick them up, read them, go over them. Tell me what you think. Tell me who your favorite Suicide Squad members are, and enjoy your comics. And to quote the infamous Stan Lee, Excelsior.